Since our game Vigilante Racer is still in early stages, I decided to get a head start on implementation. Here I am using blueprints to set and update variables of a Metasound source. The Metasound source contains audio that I designed for the sci-fi anti-gravitational engine in our game. On begin play, I set the Metasound source to play, and immediately after I am calling two functions, movement check and check if turning. In the movement check function, first we check with a boolean whether there is any input coming from the player. In this case, I am using up and down arrow keys as the input for movement, forward and backward respectively. If we're receiving input, we can set the float parameter to our desired Metasound source. In my case, it's called scan. We set it to a float variable. This value is determined in another function called gearUpTimer. In gearUpTimer, we first check if the engine is moving. If it is moving, then we play a timeline. I am skipping a set play rate node for now, but I will explain it in a second. The timeline allows us to draw curves, whatever the values we want to plot within the timeline. In my case, I have three float values for acceleration, deceleration, and volume. When the vehicle is moving, we set the values for RPM acceleration in a period of 5 seconds. When we stop receiving player input, the engine will no longer continue accelerating, and it will start decelerating. The timeline will play in reverse, and we will get float values for deceleration based on our previously drawn timeline graph. I noticed that when we decelerate, the engine was taking longer than what I imagined it would. That is where I am using a previously mentioned set play rate node. With this node, I can set the play rate of the timeline to be faster. In this case, a value of 1 is equal to the value of the timeline, which is 5 seconds. However, when we're decelerating, I have the new value rate at 2, therefore playing the timeline twice faster than before, at 2.5 seconds. This allows for the engine sound to change quicker when decelerating. In the checking turning function, we also determine if there is a player input for turning. In this case, I am using left-right arrows. Instead of using a timeline graph, I am using simple math to increase the float value within the range via the use of a clamp node. Both movement and turn function loop at a rate of 0.025, and they will update the float values accordingly. I plan to set more variables to control the Metasound source, magnetic stabilizers, the engine power, and the engine block. Thank you very much for watching.
Oh,